welcome to our new podcast, Radical Responsibility Revolution. And I have as our guest today, Lorelie Mitchell, who is one of the most impressive young people that I know. And I'm so excited to have her share some of her experiences, not only in Wichita Falls, but also just being on the cusp of a world that's about to change in a really big way. And I think it's really important that we all see the viewpoint from someplace other than our locked in places that we have. So, Lorelei, tell us a little bit about you. I know your dad. I know you, I know your mom, but I know your dad more than the rest of your family. And I know you through your dad. So I'll share a couple of things that I know you do. You love to fix up old cars with your dad. You've been in scouts. Your dad's been involved in scouts for years and years and years. You've got a you still have the sister, the girl that's living foster sister.
Yes, ma'am. She's still with us.
Okay, so you still have that. So you have
She's a
that going.
permanent placement now, so she's adopted without being adopted, basically.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys have had that in your household. So you're just this giving person. And it's really amazing the things that you do when the world thinks that kids, if you will, teenagers especially, that they're just troublemakers and they're doing things they shouldn't be doing and all of that. And I look at you and I think, oh my gosh, you are the person that we're looking towards that are going to be the leaders of our next generation. So I'm really excited about that part. So tell us what an average day, what do you do when you wake up in the morning as Lorelie Mitchell?
So the first thing I do, wake up at 5:20 every morning. Usually I'll
Wow.
check my phone, just see if anything came in overnight. I have comics I read daily, just I keep up with those. Then usually, go brush my teeth, go through my usual morning, get dressed. At around, sorry, my cat's being needy. At around
No, no,
6:10, I
she's
leave for
being on
school with my
screen.
sister. That's if we have 0 hour that day. If you don't know, 0 hour is when all the band kids especially get up super early and we go practice in the mornings to avoid having to practice after school.
And your band, you're in band too, on top of everything else.
Yes, ma'am, I play alto saxophone.
That's so great. Wow.
So
Okay.
go through my school day.
Zero.
I'm also involved in ROTC. I'm the deputy commander, company commander, and the rifle team captain there. Sorry,
And
my
the
cat is still being
ROTC.
needy.
I got to write all this down so I can have a cheat sheet. That's crazy.
ROTC, of course, I'm all IP with the exception of physics. Physics kind of killed my GPA this year. Not an
Oh, what
easy
about
class.
physics? What about physics did you not like?
Um, it's not entirely the teacher's fault. Me and the teacher didn't really jive too much. I didn't like her
No.
style of teaching, and then physics itself was just a hard class that I really struggled with. So I had to drop down into traditional this semester.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because just having, been a child myself and going through courses, the courses that I liked the best and excelled in were the ones with the greatest teachers. Would you agree with that? Is it still the same way?
Oh yeah, I mean my pre-calculus teacher, Mr. Bean, which by the way is his real name. Uh, he's such an amazing teacher. He's always like consistently there. He wants to make sure everyone in his classes pass no matter what. And he's not necessarily an easy teacher, but he takes it easy in such a way that we don't have a lot of worries about his class outside of school, which I really appreciate
Um,
because I've got so much going on.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about because I think I probably knew that you were in band, but first of all, being in ROTC, being in scouts, I mean, literally, how do you manage your time? Because you do not strike me as a stressed out person. Just looking at you, you just it feels like you're just flowing with it. I get up at 5:20 and I do this and I check that. I mean, a grown up, a person that's been on the planet for a long time with this much activity is already stressing out. So, what is your secret for letting this be in flow?
So I have a really good support system because I do, in fact, get stressed out pretty easily, actually. I guess it comes from my mother's side. But I have a good support system. They're always there to help me. And then I keep a good calendar and a good routine, and that's always helped me out. I thrive on routines.
Wow. I bet you don't realize how few, or maybe you do, how few teenagers those words pass their lips. I have a really good routine and I keep a really good calendar. More grown-ups should do that, honestly. I think that's
Oh, they
just
should.
remarkable. Yeah.
We have a family calendar. Everyone adds to it. It's on our iPhones, and so it's color coded, so we know who's been as what. We know who's going where out of the house at any given time, and we can easily check what we're doing any given day. And that is the best way to make sure things don't overlap because I'm able to look quickly at my calendar and go, oh hey, I can't do March 1st. I'm doing things for the Scouts, or I can't do April 9th. That's prom.
Wow. And so whose idea was the calendar? Your dad's or your mom's?
It was my father's.
Yeah, I was going to guess. I didn't want to give that away. That's he's very structured, which is very awesome. So tell me about how you decided to get into band and especially playing saxophone alto. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you decide to do that?
Well, I didn't really want to be an athlete in middle school. I never have been that person. I'm better than my mother, but I'm not a great singer, so choir was out. And I could have done theater. I probably really would have liked theater, but my father and my grandfather had both played saxophone in their respective high school, and I think my
Oh,
grandfather played in his college band. So we already had a saxophone at my grandparents, and that was going to save us money. And I was like, you know what? That's really cool. I want to play saxophone. Like, let's do it.
and then you did.
Hmm.
That is so great. So how do you feel that saxophone is going to impact your life? Because what you shared were a lot of things that are mm, let me see, passions in a lot of people's lives, whether it be the drama, the dancing, singing, whatever. But it also shapes how you view the world. So, as a musician, because that's really truly what this is, how do you think that that impacts how you view the world from an artistic perspective and also just from a musician's point of view?
So the scientific answer is that learning an instrument and learning musical arts, especially fine arts, builds new neural pathways in your brains, and that hey, that's really important.
He's
So
talking my language.
on a
Yeah.
biological level, it actually helps your brain out. I think, especially for a lot of older
Yeah.
folks, I think we should have just passion bands around town because it helps keep your fingers moving, it helps keep your brain moving. It's kind of like those little
Mhm.
crossword puzzles people do to stay awake every day, but better. So no one says
Yes.
crosswords, but it's more involved. From another perspective, music really helps you appreciate life because it's one time you can kind of just slow down and enjoy life and be in the
Mhm.
moment when you hear everyone playing around you and you know that you are joined in that sound, especially when you hear yourself creating those harmonies. That's always a really cool moment. That's what I really love about bands. It's just
Wow.
being able to play with everybody else. And from another perspective, three, I know, right? Being a musician teaches you how to practice, and I'm not going to say sets you up for failure. I know personally we have something called Region. That's one of our competitions we do, and that's a concert thing, not a marching thing. But they
Mhm.
have the hardest pieces of music that I have ever had to play. They are, and you can ask any high school saxophone about this, they are ridiculous. They are hard. But I
Wow.
learned how to practice through them. And the all the things I learned practicing saxophone, I am able to take on and carry with me through life. Do it
Mhm.
slow, then do it fast. That's a pretty
Yeah.
basic one. Seems like it would only apply to music, but you still can apply it to other things you're practicing with. You don't have to do it all at once. Take it in chunks. Those are
Mhm.
all good ways of doing it.
So, are you sure you're not a teenager in a 95-year-old wise body? I mean, the things that you're sharing, it's taken me, not most of my life, but that I've learned more as an adult than I did as a teenager, particularly. So, I mean, just the idea that you're talking about neural pathways, because you're talking my language here. I'm like, whoa. I love the brain. And so how did you even come to comprehend this term neural pathways? I don't think that that's a typical teenager's conversation, generally speaking.
I've just it's one I've heard a lot. I know my parents have talked about it. I think my music teachers talked about it. And I see a lot
Mhm.
about it online. And if you understand what neurons are, you understand what neural
Mhm.
pathways are. They're not
Mhm.
necessarily synonyms. I'm sure a neurosurgeon would fight me on that, but they are close enough for the regular average human being to use.
Yes. Well, that did they talk about that in physics or did you just got that from other sources?
I got that from other sources. Physics is just math. That's probably what made it so hard.
Well, it sounds to me as I'm talking to you, I remember years ago, I was in this women's business women's organization, and they had a process where they taught the women in the organization that were business women how to speak, and that we would go to these contests and they would ask us random questions, kind of like, and this is really not what this is like, but the how you ask a question of a Miss America candidate or participant, right? It's just off the cuff. You supposedly don't know what it is. And to be able to answer questions as effectively as you're doing right now is a skill set that so many people do not have. I mean, just to have it, period, let alone at your, you know, precipice of being an adult is incredible. What do you attribute that to?
So it's genetic. I'm sure you've met my father. I've never really had a big fear of public speaking. It's never bothered me that much. I don't like dancing in public. I don't like singing in public, but public speaking, that's easy. So part of it is that I just learned how to do it. As an elementary schooler, I did oral reading, which helped because you have to learn how to speak clearly and you have to learn how to do inflections and everything. And my dad would help me practice, and he would actually, if I got to talking too fast or I broke eye contact or anything, he would have my brother throw a pillow at me to get my attention, not too hard. But that's one way I learned. Through Scouts, there's also a public speaking merit badge. That's part of it. You have to actually make a speech at the end of your merit badge in order to be able to qualify. And then just through other things that I've done, I couldn't really name them all, but I have been asked to speak before just because I guess I'm my father's daughter and I just do a lot of things around the community. And part of it is
Yeah.
just experience. I've done it enough that it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. The thing that's really striking me, though, is that people can speak, they can rehearse a speech, they can read a speech, but this off the cuff that we're doing right now, that I didn't come in with questions. I just like to follow where we're going, and you're very easy to follow and ask a follow-up question with. But the fact that you've just been able to, when you said three different reasons why music will help you, is just like it just came off of the top of your head without any hesitation. So I just want to acknowledge that that's a remarkable quality for humans in general. So it's a beautiful thing to watch. So that leads me to a little bit of this conversation around you giving this talk on the Constitution. So tell us who you gave that in front of, how you came to do it, what was the direction for the talk itself, and then how did you feel about it overall at the end of it?
So first off, forgive me, my father and brother just came home and my dog likes to forget who my dad is. So that's why she's growling in the background.
Okay.
um, so the oratorical contest. So how I got there is actually a really funny story. At first, in like November, I got a call from Mr. Kurtz, who is a good friend of mine because he is my charter organization rep for Scouts, which means he represents the American Legion for us at any Scout troop local meetings. So he's important. Like I said, he's a good friend. I love him to death. And so I declined to do it at first because I was like, I don't have the time. I don't really want to do this speech. I don't think I should do it. The morning of, he calls me. I'm still in my jammies, hunkered down in my comfy chair. And he says, look, I only have one kid here. Is there any way any one of your daughters, he's speaking to my father at this time, could come out and just, I can stall them just so as long as one of them can come out and just speak. They don't even have to do anything. They'll win $500 for showing up. I did, by the way. So I get up, get dressed. I think I'm in like a nice button-up pearl snap shirt that I have and some jeans. And I go, and they give me the now the prompt is the same for all American Legion contests. They tell you like it's been the same for however long they've had this contest. I didn't know until I walked into the room, the preparation room.
Uh-huh.
And I remember enough from my 8th grade US history and my sophomore year US history to just speak off the cuff about the Constitution and civil rights and everything. And so the first time it was not that good. Along with the 7 to 8 minute speech about the Constitution and everything, you have to give a 3 to 5 minute speech over a random event of their choosing. It didn't go great, but I won because neither me or the other girl were very prepared. She, because she'd been given the wrong information entirely about the contest. I hope she's doing well now. She goes to Legacy. I don't get to see her that much. But so I took first place in that just because I've got, I can boil it down to I've got more experience as a public speaker. It's something I do like doing.
Yeah.
Then, so I move on and I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to a second round on a favor. I show up the day of. I actually got coded for wearing jeans again. They were like, hey, don't wear that to the next stage competition, please, after the fact. So I show up, I give another somewhat off the cuff speech. This time it's slightly more rehearsed. It sounded way better, but I completely flunk my 3 to 5 minute speech, which was over the 26th Amendment. So that's what gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. But I take first place again. That's like another $1,500 I win through this contest. So if any youth out there is needing scholarship money, the American Legion Oratorical is the way to go. It
That's
is, I'm
good
not going to say it's so
advice.
easy, but there's usually enough spots open that they will guarantee you money. And the old people, I call them that jokingly, but the people out there love to help out the youth and see the youth interacting. And I make it to the final stage of the competition, by the way. I go to Denton, I take third out of fourth there, come home with $3,250 to my name. And this is all just stuff that I learned to do off the cuff. I mean, that 3 to 5 minute speech you can't really prepare for. Well, okay. You get 5 minutes prep time. You can write down your thoughts, can't take anything into the speech room with you.
Yeah.
But part of it is just number one, you have to remember some of your classes because those
Mhm.
were knowledge-based arguments. And then number two, have to summary session number three. For speeches like that, in competitions especially, where you have the time to prepare, you have to prepare. But being a public speaker is all about confidence. And if I killed it,
Yes.
nothing else, I killed it with confidence because I walked in, no
Mhm.
matter how nervous I was, nobody knew.
Yeah. Well, so that is, first of all, that's an incredible story. And the fact that you made that kind of money because you just were willing to be confident, to show up, to do these things that I think a lot of times young people just, they're just sitting around waiting for something to happen for them. And I mean, just this little bit of this conversation so far, Lorelei goes out and makes it happen. That to me is the essence of what a what a human can do and create the life that they want. But I do want to touch on this. It's like it's no big deal, right? In my history class and US Constitution, and I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a grown-ups in the world right now and in the United States fighting over what's constitutional and what's not. So tell me what you believe that you learned over this time that you were so prepared to talk about from a constitutional perspective off of the cuff, because it's not what literally most people in our country are doing, let alone somebody of your age.
So something I did learn, and I think the speech contest really gave me a chance to expound upon in my own head. The first time I went through, I don't think I hit on it as much, but the second time I went through with a somewhat more prepared speech, part of what you have to go over is civic duties and responsibilities. And I
Mm,
said that people have a civic duty to protest because the government does not always make the right choice. And that is not a stab against anyone at all. It's just a historical
mhm,
fact. We've had the Teapot Dome scandals. For instance,
mhm.
even the Alien and Sedition Acts. I mean, I know they were a long time ago in the 1790s, but that was a First Amendment breach, and that was incredibly important. And we even have the example I used was Dr. Martin Luther King and his fight for civil rights and against segregation. If he had not protested and the people had not been brave enough to stand up, then chances are it would not have happened. Civil rights, the way they are now, would not have happened until a long time later. And that's not acceptable. And that's one of the things I definitely got to learn and think about. The other part is just I got to study several different amendments for those 3 to 5 minute speech. They tell you a list of amendments, and you have to. You don't know which one you're going to give a speech on until you walk into the preparation room, and so you have to research all 4 or 5 of them. And 2 times I got the 26th Amendment, which was about giving 18-year-olds the right to vote. But I also had to research the first, the seventh, the 26th, and the I think it was the 21st that repealed prohibition. Could be wrong on that one.
Mhm.
Or if it was the amendment that put prohibition in place or repealed it.
So which one did you speak about? Which amendment when you were doing the final speech?
My final speech in Denton was over the 26th Amendment. Luckily, that
Mhm.
time I did better than my previous contest where I had just completely bombed that speech.
What does that mean for Lorelei to bomb? Because for most people, it's probably excelling, but for you, you call it bombing. What does the bombing look like for Lorelei?
I got to about a minute and a half and it has to reach 3 minutes or else you get a penalty on your score.
Yes.
And I just kind of repeated the same thing over and over. I blabbered on and just like rambled for like another minute and a half and walked out of the room, just barely made the time clock at 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I bet you there's many, many people that have done that and worse many, many times. So just speaking to that amendment, and honest to goodness, I didn't realize that there was an amendment uh changing the voting age. So what was it before it was 1821?
I believe it was 21.
So what are your feelings about that? Because you're close to that. You're going to be voting how soon?
7 months.
Yes. Wow. So how does that to talk about that from a perspective of somebody who's about to go through that threshold of being able to vote and talking about this amendment, and you've done enough research that you know why they created that amendment. Share some thoughts about that.
So that amendment is really important, I'm sure, because it seems like you hang around a couple of young people every once in a while. A lot of
Yes.
people say, I have the right to vote, I have the right to go fight and die for my country, I can't
Mhm.
drink. The reason the 26th Amendment was enacted was because of the same ideas. So during the Vietnam War era, obviously a bunch of young men were getting drafted, and they would get drafted immediately once they turned 18. Now, 18, I think, was already the federal age of reason in the United States at the time, but I think the voting age was left to the states. So I think all the 26 really did was just federalize and make a federal voting age that every state
Mhm.
had to follow. So you had a bunch of young people who were protesting the fact that they could not vote for the president, they couldn't vote in senatorial, gubernatorial, or congressional races, but they could go to Vietnam and die for the country they couldn't vote for. It actually had the fastest ratification in US history. That means 2/3 of the Senate agreed, and
Yeah.
3/4 of the states agreed to ratify this in just 4 months.
Wow.
That is an incredible amount of time.
That is a very interesting factoid that even I didn't know growing up in the Vietnam era when my, friends were being sent to war. I did not realize that number one, that was an amendment that we had to make something like that it was done then, it was done so quickly, and just coming from that time frame and watching boys really get drafted was heartbreaking. So thank you for sharing something that I did not know that I think is just remarkable, that you can speak to that. So given that now you have this right that's coming up in 7 months to be able to vote, how important is that to you, given the fact that you understand how the Constitution works, how all of these pieces play together, that protesting is important to governance? How does that make you feel? And how do you hold that responsibility in your heart or your wherever you're holding it?
So I'm very excited personally to vote. I don't know what races I can vote in currently, but I have the interwebs. I can figure it out. So,
Exactly.
like I said, I'm super excited. Part of that is that I did give a speech over the civic responsibilities and what I said to justify having the civic duty to vote. If you do not vote, somebody else speaks for you, basically.
Right.
Because you are not voting, somebody else has your voice in their hands. And I cannot abide by that. I don't think any citizen ever should. I've met
Mhm.
a lot of people my age, especially who are like, I don't want to vote, and I know why. I mean, me and my parents sometimes have opposing political views, but that just comes to the territory. I'm young, they're older than I am. We come, sorry, Dad, we come from different places. Well, not
Yeah.
different places. But I'm sure you get what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
But it's that contention can create a lot of distress in people, especially if they're very, I guess, liberal or Democratic kids and their parents are very conservative and Republican, or vice versa. The same thing can
Vice
happen.
versa. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
a lot of people, I guess, are just scared to vote because they're scared they'll make the wrong choice. And I For me, it doesn't feel that way because no matter what, I'm not making a wrong choice. I have two choices and neither of them can be wrong because they also can't be right. But
Mhm.
to all my young people out there who may be listening, please go vote. You're not making a wrong
Mhm.
choice. You don't have to tell anyone who you voted for. You can lie
Yeah.
about it if you wanted to, and nobody can make that a crime. So if it really scares you that bad, I promise you it's nothing to be scared of. Go out and vote. Go have a voice in your government, even if it's just a small
Mhm.
voice. And that's,
Yeah.
like I said, really exciting to me that my voice can make a difference in the world.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's really a valid, salient point that it used to be that we wouldn't tell. I mean, it's supposed to be a secret vote, literally. But, we've got the internet and we got people talking and making their noises and their voices heard in a very loud way. And so I think that's a really, really, really important thing for somebody that's listening to this to know. Vote, and you don't have to tell a soul because it's your vote. And I think that's really important, given the fact that we do have families that are on different viewpoints, and that does not mean that we don't love our families. That's the thing that I find so fascinating, is that whatever our political persuasion or decision making process is, that it shouldn't affect how we care about one another. So that brings me to probably a transition into ROTC. So obviously, you have some allegiance, if you will, to our country, or something like that. I don't know. I'm going to ask you about it. What is being an ROTC, and how did you come to make the decision that that would be something that you wanted to do?
So originally, I did not plan to go that far in ROTC. I joined because I had a friend in there who said they had a rifle team. I love doing marksmanship stuff. It's something I do outside of school. I'm on a marksmanship team outside of school as well. You can add that to my list of extracurriculars. But so she said, "Hey, there's a rifle team," and I was like, "That sounds so cool." So my freshman year, I signed up and joined. And ROTC is more than just a high school military. ROTC has actual lesson plans, and its goal isn't to
Mhm.
prep you for the military, it's to prepare you for life outside of high school and really just to make everyone a better citizen. For instance,
Mhm.
right now, we're actually going over in our class what it means to be a citizen of the United States. So, what it means to be natural born, naturalized, and just certain amendments and rights that we have protected under the Constitution. And so I'll explain a little bit about ROTC. If you go through all 4 years of ROTC, so you start as a freshman and graduate out as a senior, you have no obligation to join the military in JROTC. In ROTC, it's a different story. I haven't been through that, so I can't speak for them. However, if you go through all 4 years, you do get a certificate that allows you to join as a higher rank in whatever branch you go into. I think it
Yeah.
goes from E0 to like E2 or E3.
Right.
So part of my decision to join RSC, like I said, was the rifle team. This year I was only about a staff sergeant, which is not terrible, but not great for incoming junior. And my Sergeant Major Montez, grabs me and he's makes me the company commander. First, new schools, new ROTC, and he's like, "Okay, are you going to the board?" And I was like, "What's the board?" And he was like, "Okay, kid, you're going to the board." So
Okay.
I go and do this interview. Basically, that's what that is.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up being the S1, which just means that I was the adjutant. I took care of all the paperwork. And then about December, I became the deputy commander, which means I'm second in charge in the whole battalion. And it's funny because I didn't think I would ever be here as a freshman or a sophomore because my decision just came from wanting to do the rifle team. But it is, I guess, a good lesson to a lot of people out there because, you know, the Air Force says it, aim high, fly high.
Mhm.
The Army says be all you can be. So
Yeah.
don't join something and not have no aspirations. It's not. I think that's the word. Just tricked
Yeah.
myself out because there's also the word aspirate, which is something completely different.
Yeah. Exactly.
Never join anything without any aspirations at all. Even if you
Yeah.
don't want to go that high in it because you don't have time or whatever, it's always important to just know there's somewhere you can go, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to rise in the ranks like that.
Yeah. That's incredible advice. Did you ever watch a show? Because as you're talking, you kind of remind me of there's a show with oh, what is his name? Tim, whatever's Last Man Standing. So it was a comedy, and he had a daughter named Eve who joined the ROTC, and she was very just very direct. She knew her stuff and she had a mind of her own. And so if you have a chance to go watch that show, you remind me so much of her because she really truly just was beyond her years. So when you talk about that, you're learning about what it is to be a citizen. And I remember years and years and years ago, somebody said to me their best advice was just be a good citizen in your community. And I think I heard that and I went, that's really good advice for someone. Because if you think about it, just being a good citizen, even if you don't know what it means, it allows you to show up, be helpful for your community, help us old people across the street kind of thing. But the fact is that what does that mean to you after learning about it a little bit more? Not the naturalizing and all of that, but what do you think it means to be a good citizen?
So being a good citizen, well, you vote, you pay taxes, and you pay attention. If you can't pay taxes, at least pay attention. So for yeah, right.
I
Um,
like that.
so for the community, at least, that means not necessarily attending every council meeting, but knowing what's going on within your council, knowing what district you're a part of. Actually, I can say I know what district I'm a part of, to be honest with you. Sorry, I'm part of District 2. My dad is involved in the community, but
Yes.
that'll become more relevant when I'm older. So,
Well,
but it is
yeah.
important to know what district you're in, know what demographic you're voting as a part of, and then give back to your community in some way. For me,
Mhm.
obviously, I'm an Eagle Scout. I did
Yeah.
my project for Northwest Texas Field and Stream, built them a raised archery platform. But even just going out, not even a formalized project, going out and picking up trash on any of the bike trails, picking up fishing line at Lake Wichita, that's also part of being a good citizen, is being able to care for your community.
Hmm. So that brings us to scouts. So you've been in scouts probably most of your life because of your dad, right?
Kind of.
Kind of.
More on that
So
later.
do you think you've accelerated your participation in scouts in the past several years, or diminished it?
um, well, I've definitely accelerated as I'm an Eagle Scout.
Hmm. Yeah. What do you think about just, I mean, we don't have to have a political discussion around it, but what do you think about the name change of Scouts of America, given the fact that
I
girls are in scouts, have been for a
okay.
while?
That's why I say I wasn't so involved in scouts when I was younger. Although my dad worked for the council and I was at camp nearly every weekend, I wasn't an actual scout. I joined when I was 11, I think, as a Weeblo.
Mhm.
I was a Weeblo for about 3 months, and I moved on to my Arrow Blight, graduated out of that program, became a full-fledged Boy Scout, and that was really exciting. As for the
Yeah.
name change, I've met people who are very against it, and then a lot of the girls in my troop are just kind of like, Me personally, I am stoked, and I've always been stoked. That is not any sort of act. There's always been women in scouting if you care to look. It wasn't until like 1989 or 1991 that women could be anything other than cub masters. But before that,
Mm.
going back to the 70s, you had these rangers at Philmont, which is basically the people who lead crews out to the back country and teach them how to backpack. That they were rangers, and there have been rangers there since the 70s or the 90s. I can't remember the exact, but somewhere in that era. They even have their own painting dedicated to them called East of the Sun and West of the Moon.
Hmm.
There's always been women in scouting, and especially
Hmm.
to all the girls out there, like my aunt Ashley. She grew up with scouts. She likely would have been a scout, but she never got the chance because she was a girl. And
Hmm.
like I said, I'm just really excited because it finally acknowledges that it's not just boys in this organization. It's an organization for everybody and anybody.
Right.
So as long as you're not a bad person.
Exactly. So, when they brought up this name change, I saw a little video clip of the recruiting black and white videos of the Boy Scouts, and it was very much about boys and men and all of that. And yet, that you, as you said, and I know this, there's always been women in Scouts, and so they were trying to not trying to, but the mission I think was to make boys to men. But scouting is so much more than that. It really is. It it develops a really well-rounded individual. And so what speak to what you feel scouting has impacted your life that has made it better.
So, scouting, if nothing else, gave me a good set of morals and a code to follow myself by. Because you've got the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. And if you don't know what else to do, you can always ask yourself, okay, how do I handle this within the Scout Oath and the Scout Law? Now, I'm
Wow.
not saying a perfect scout follows every single one of those all the time. We make
Hmm.
mistakes, we slip up. It's the same thing that anyone who goes to church regularly would tell you. You can't be perfect
Sure.
all the time.
Right.
But I will also say that it has given me a greater love for the outdoors, especially going on my first backpacking trip, Philmont in
Hmm.
2022. When you get outside and you realize just how much the natural world is around you, you start to really appreciate it and you want to protect it pretty deeply. I got to learn
Hmm.
leave no trace, and I'm very big on that. I I'm not going to say I always have been, but I certainly am now, just a very general leave no trace person. Scouting
Hmm.
also gives young people a sense of community, I guess. We've got girls in our troop who they are, I'm not going to name names here, but they'll probably know who they are if I'm speaking if they hear this. But
Yeah.
they come from nothing. They generally don't have great home lives, and scouting gives them a chance to be part of something better than their family, and it gives them
Hmm.
a chance in a way to escape. And if they have someone watching out for them, like my mother watches out for them, they have a chance to break that cycle. And they have people who are cheering them on as they break their cycle. And that's
Hmm.
honestly why scouting really means so much to me. It's not the merit badges, and it's not the hiking or the camping. It's not the friends you make along the way. It's the family you find along the way and the people that you empower and raise up through that organization.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that so much that you see the world with people that don't have anything or have challenging lives. And it's not about a handout, it's about a hand up. It's about how can I bring you into this community of whatever this place is and support them and raise them up to be their highest version of themselves. It's like makes me want to cry actually.
Yes, and
Um,
Scouts actually has a thing to take care of that. They call it Scout Reach. That's its whole
mhm,
purpose is to make sure that these, maybe inner city kids or kids who don't
mhm.
have enough money to afford a uniform, it makes sure they have the chance to be able to experience things like summer camps and Philmonts and have their own uniform.
Yeah, that's just so lovely. So I want to, for people that don't know this term, because my dad told us sort of something similar when we were camping as kids. You better leave that place better than you found it when you come in.
Mhm.
But so
Yeah.
speak to that about leave no trace. So that's a principle that y'all have in Scouts. So tell us about that so that people really understand, because I don't think that we have this common sense to do things like this anymore. If you're not in Scouts and your parents aren't raising this way, you don't understand that it's so important to do that in your world in general, not just when you're out on a camping trip. So speak to that principle and that value.
So I can't recite exactly the leave no trace principles, but the values they hold still sit in my heart. And the basics of it is leave it better than you found it, pick up any trash you find along the way, and don't mess with the wildlife. But I think the
Mhm.
best example of this is that I was in the cafeteria at the brand spanking new high schools, which are pretty nice, and I'd like to keep them that way. Everyone should. I mean, they're brand new. Who wouldn't want to keep them that way? No more rounds
Exactly.
like they were at Ryder.
Yeah.
Um, so someone upends a plate or something, and they are about to just walk off. I'm like, hey, can you pick that up? And they're like, why? Actually, no, it wasn't theirs. Sorry. That's not how that story goes. That's a different story.
Yeah.
And I asked someone to pick up this plate of trash or whatever it is, and they're like, why? It's not mine. And I kind of looked at them and I was like, does it matter? Nobody else is going to grab it.
Mhm.
That's part of
Mhm.
leave no trace. Leave it better than you
Yeah.
found it. If you find trash anywhere, obviously whoever dropped it isn't coming back for it. So make it
Yeah.
a point to pick it up because you will feel better about yourself because it's just such a simple little act that will have a bigger impact than you
Yeah.
realize. There's
Yeah.
also leave the wildlife alone. You have to
Yeah.
realize that it's not always the wildlife's fault if they eat a human. Sometimes it's just human stupidity. And then leave it better than you
Yeah.
found it.
Yeah.
I
No, I
mean,
think that's such that's such great information for everybody, every human. It really truly is. I think it's so beautiful that you have that philosophy. So what's on tap for you in the next 5 years? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Because I know you got a plan because hello, you're organized.
so my main goal right now is to get accepted into the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. And that is a very prestigious and hard to do thing because not
Yes,
only
it
do I have
is.
excuse me, do just a normal regular college application, I have to send
Yeah.
in my resume, I have to do a physical
Hmm.
test, and then I have to get an endorsement from a congressman. By the way, in
Yep.
this area, it's Senator Ronnie Jackson. Sorry, not Senator,
Yep.
Congressman Ronnie Jackson.
Yep.
And so I really want to go there and study meteorology. However, if that doesn't pan out because it is a hard academy to get into, I may not make it. Who knows? I also would like to go to OU in Norman, Oklahoma, and study meteorology there. And if nothing else, I'm top 10% of my class. I have automatic admission to any university in Texas, so I could go to A&M Galveston and study meteorology there as well.
Mm. So this is a different topic altogether, meteorology. We haven't even touched on that. So tell me what the attraction is for meteorology.
So I started watching storm chasing videos just out of boredom one day, and it's incredible. Just I didn't actually it didn't come out of a love for Twisters, by the way, which everyone assumes, which is hilarious to
Yeah.
me. I love that movie, but it's not where it came from. And
Yeah.
I was watching these storm chasing videos, and I was able to see not the way tornadoes form because nobody knows how tornadoes form. Actually, there's we know some of the basics, but we don't really know what happens up in the atmosphere to make the tornadoes spin, and that's fascinating to me. It's like I want to see how these things tick, and being able to see these giant monsters of whirling dust and wind, and they were
Hmm.
so gorgeous. They were also so terrifying at the same time. And there's this invisible force all around us that we can't see. We call it, we normal people call it wind, but just the atmosphere. Kind of, I guess what I really want to do is dissect and see what makes the weather tick. Why do things
Wow.
happen like they do? We can't see this force, but how does it affect us?
Wow. That is something. And I love, you must love the weather here then, because we have the severe weather all the time. And I live up here closer to Burke, so we get more severe weather. So it's a fun, I guess, pastime for people to sit in their driveways when it looks like a tornado is coming from Burke, which I find hilarious. Are you one of those people that would like to sit in your driveway and watch the tornadoes come, or be more even assertive and go out and chase them since you watch storm chasers?
So I would not ever drive the car chasing a tornado. However, I will take any other position available. I would not be the one driving the car, but I will do everything else. As it stands,
Okay.
I don't tend to go out and sit in my driveway to watch the weather. We have a porch for that. But I
Yeah.
will say the biggest thing I do, especially during severe weather, is that I go and I make sure I have everything prepared and ready to be safe. Because if tornado does come for my area of town, if it's total desecration like the 1979 Terrible Tuesday tornado, then I want to make sure that I have everything in place to be able to be safe with my family. For my
Yeah.
family, that usually means we have some form of personal ID on us at all times. It goes in a little bag with us into our only interior house, only interior room. We're wearing steel-toed boots of some kind. We all have hiking boots, so we all wear those. Wearing long pants, some kind of overshirt. That way, we're not getting scratched up if debris falls on us. That's really what I do when preparing for storms. And I just want to make sure everything's safe first before
Yeah.
I will go out and watch the storms, but I gotta make sure everything's in order first.
I swear you are in a 95-year-old's real body, because you're a remarkable um, woman, person, human. You're remarkable. I just hope you know that. It's so fun to talk to you about this. So, because you're so wise and you've studied things and you've learned things in school, but nowadays the internet has got a plethora of information, and of course AI is always the big topic. I personally love AI. Do you use AI at all in your life?
Not at all. You can ask my
Wow.
father about the full story. I really do not like AI. I think it's
Really?
just a matter of principle to me because everything
Mhm.
it's spitting out is just something it plagiarized basically from another source on the internet. AI
Yeah.
content or AI art, some people call it, makes it is even worse because it's not true art. A human has to make art for it to be art, or at least something with a soul.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can ask my father. This is more about him. Okay, I had to send a letter to Senator, sorry, not Senator. Oh my God, I keep saying the wrong title. Congressman Ronnie
Congressman.
Jackson. I was inviting him
Hmm.
to my Eagle Scout ceremony, and his office sent me back, and they asked me to send them a letter detailing everything that I had done. And he used AI to proofread my letter, but the problem was when he proofread it, he had AI actually edit the letter, which I was not a fan of because I would rather AI make the suggestion and then I go out and edit the letter myself.
Yeah.
Uh, just as it is, I mean, seriously, you missed off. You're gonna have to call my father on that story sometime. I really cannot stand AI. It has its
Wow.
place. I do understand that. However, as
Mhm.
long as it has its place and I don't have to use it, I'm fine with that and I won't use it.
Hmm. So where do you get your information? Say, for instance, someone comes to you with, I don't know, a question about a topic that's a recent topic because there's so many things going on in the world right now. And as I said, this is not a political um, podcast. This is just about talking about you, but we all are looking at things. So for me, I research things through AI because it's easier than Google. Google's a very keyword based search. So you and kids, I noticed that in my family, if we're having a conversation as a family, everybody's on their phone fact checking each other. So maybe we'll call it fact checking, but do you do any fact checking? Do you ever have a conversation with somebody and you go, oh, I need to know the answer to that? And then how do you find those answers?
If it's something I'm really passionate about, I do go and fact check. So I'm on TikTok. Most news sources have an official TikTok. CNN and BBC, I think, both have official TikTok accounts, and it's going to sound bad. That's where I get a lot of my news from, though, just because it's not a bad source if it's coming from an official, actual news source. It's just on a different platform. And we don't
Mhm.
get newspapers delivered every day. I don't tend to watch the afternoon news just because I don't usually get the chance to. What I will
Mhm.
say, here's a good example of this. I, like a day ago, just sent a letter to Congressman Ronnie Jackson. He keeps popping up, by the way, kind of funnily enough. Um, and it was over the National Parks, National Forest Service, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service budget and hiring freeze. I'm of the opinion that the National Parks, National Forest, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services are some of the most efficient departments in the government, period.
Mhm.
I would I was begging him basically to add more money to their budgets and lift the federal hiring freeze for them. However, when I
Mhm.
first heard about the park rangers and staff getting fired, the first thing I did was go, oh, hold on. So I actually went and that was one thing I did go and fact check. If I see something on TikTok, even if it's from an official news source, I may occasionally go and just look up more information or actually check to make sure, that it is true and not just something that's being parroted.
So where did you look that information up?
Other news sources, but also there is the National Park Service does have their own website. There is an associated union, I would say, for the National Park Service. It's like something the Alliance for Conservation of National Parks, something like that. And
Mhm.
that was the first place I looked because the best source to get your information is directly from the source. If they're the ones putting it out, they're probably right.
Yeah.
And it was true. There had been over 1,000 staffers fired and 34, 3,400, I think, from National Forest Service.
Yeah.
So the numbers
So
TikTok.
yeah, TikTok. I love TikTok. I'm a TikTok person. I'm praying that TikTok stays. So there you go. I said it. I love that it brings us sort of full circle back to um, not necessarily that you're protesting per se, you're not marching in the street with a sign, but you are voicing you're activating your voice to our elected representatives. So that to me is what I think most people have stopped doing more than anything else is engaging with their representatives. We're in a representative government, so that if they communicate with their representative, just like you did about the forest department, that there would be more ability for them to make the decisions in the way that their constituents want rather than screaming and yelling. So tell me, if you had one bit of advice to those people out there that are listening that have a voice, that can vote, how can they not necessarily be in the streets protesting, but share their voice with who is representing us now?
So the First Amendment guarantees the rights to petition and protest. So if it's something like I was about the National Park Service that you're extremely passionate about, you can find others who are extremely passionate about it, like yourself, and you can make a petition that is a call to action almost, either telling the government you can't do this instead, or just, hey, let's all rise up and get the government to not do this. And you can not make, I shouldn't say that. You can have everyone sign this petition if they really care about it, and if you send in enough signatures, I mean, any elected official has listened to that, especially if it's a majority of their voting party. And it's not as if you're going to get all the signatures in the area, or really even a majority in the area for a petition
Mhm.
like that. But that's why other people have other petitions. So if they get enough petitions with enough signatures, then they know something's wrong and they have to change it. So part of doing that and making your voice heard, you got to talk to your congressman or engage with them in some way. Check up on what they're doing. You don't have to be engaged on every single little thing they do in Congress, but at least know what their policies are and what they support and what they feel like they should be doing. And if you're upset about what they're doing, it's not a terrible idea to send them a letter or shoot them an email or even call
Mhm.
into their office, because there are certain offices that have call centers for concerned citizens.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not saying make your voice heard just by doing other actions. Make your voice heard by speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you a little background on my experience in life, is my mother worked for a representative of the state government in California, and that was her job, was to take in all of this information for this representative, and it really truly does work. So if if anything, you've given people an opportunity to hear a different way of communicating, and that's the petition. I love the petition because it's one voice. It's great. You wrote a letter. It's fantastic. And if 9,000 other people do it, Ronnie or whoever the representative will listen. But we all have the ability. There's actually, websites that you can make your own petition and send it out and have people sign it electronically. I think it's fabulous. The day of electronics, we can do all of these things. So I think that's such a great suggestion to give to people, that they can do that, because we can be heard if we choose to be heard. So, if you were to give one piece of advice to people that are in your age category of what the most important thing is to do today in today's world, what would it be? And I know that's a big, tall order.
Don't get bogged down. Don't get apathetic. It is really hard because there is this inundation of doom and gloom from all 15,000 different sides that's telling you the world's going to end as we know it. You're screwed over, young children. Sorry, that's a vulgar phrase, but that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, Pick one thing. Pick one thing that you really care about and make that a priority. If what you really care about is trying to stop husky debarking in Oklahoma, so be it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're involved. But don't get
Mhm.
apathetic and just shut down entirely. That is actually a government tactic they use sometimes. It's called like the shock tactic. If you throw enough at
Mhm.
somebody, they can't process it all. So don't
Mhm.
attempt to process all of it. Like I
Mhm.
can't beg this enough. Don't get apathetic. Just pick that one little thing.
Wow. Sage, sage wisdom. I am just so ecstatic that I decided to call you and do this, because I think this is one of the most remarkable interviews that I've ever done, because you have so much going for you, but you're so full of wisdom. I mean, at this age, by the time you are 90, you're going to be sitting on a mountaintop telling people how they should live their lives, not from a bad way, just from a wise, wise woman. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing this today. And I can't wait to show you the final output. So it's fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you.